Was so powerful, anything was possible for her. And
welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at dynasties throughout history that gained or kept power through conquest, cruelty, or bloody family rivalries.
Bring it up.
The House of Tudor. It can often prove difficult keeping track of various royal lineages throughout history, but Henry VIII is one of those English monarchs whose legacy, for better or worse, remains secure.
Until I saw it for myself, I'd never realized the scale of Henry's ambition.
His reign was just one belonging to the House of Tudor, which was also led by Henry VII, Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I. The dynasty was infamous for their brutality and punishment, incorporating methods such as drawing and quartering to rule by intimidation and fear.
I hurt no man. I do no wrong.
The reigns also became known for their religious intolerance after Henry VIII established the Church of England when the Catholic Pope wouldn't grant him a divorce. Still, 2 of his 6 marriages ended in execution.
So now I believe, with all my heart, that I will take another wife.
The House of Medici. We fail to imagine a world where a family dynasty as powerful and influential as the Medicis of Italy achieved their strength through anything less than unscrupulous means.
By the mid-15th century, the Medici family had fought their way to power in Florence.
This prestigious banking family admittedly did support creativity and the arts throughout their years of influence, although they also often went to extreme lengths to retain their influence. Those that rose up in opposition to the Medicis often had their personal lives and reputations ruined by slander.
You bribed, you killed, you intimidated in order to win friends and influence people.
Many were eliminated entirely with fatal prejudice. Not even the papacy was safe from being purchased by the Medici money, while Catherine de' Medici's reputation for cruelty is remembered today for instances such as the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. Capetian Dynasty. The history books contain many bloody stories of betrayal, punishment, and death. The Tour de Nesle affair very negatively affected the familial strength of France's Capetian Dynasty during its later years.
This is the story behind the liaison that caused the 100 Years' War.
This story of political marriages, adultery, discovery, and punishment reads like a how-to manual for a TV show like Game of Thrones, complete with a cruel and bloody ending. The daughters-in-law of King Philip IV were imprisoned for life and shaven bald for allegedly cheating on their royal spouses. But this was nothing compared to the fates that awaited their lovers. These cuckolding knights were said to have been castrated prior to their brutal torture and execution. The House of Romanov, one of the most brutal revolutionary executions in history, is also yet another example of a heinous wrong not making a right.
I think he looks pretty terrifying, and in real life he was absolutely terrifying.
The family and entourage of Nicholas II, the Tsar of Russia, was mercilessly killed and brutalized in the wake of Vladimir Lenin's Bolshevik Revolution. This was a reprisal of the House of Romanov's own history of unjust cruelty, their list of offenses assisting in lighting the fuse for said revolution.
Nicholas was a fatalist. He believed that whatever happened was ultimately God's will.
Nicholas II may not have enjoyed a reputation for cruelty as infamous as Peter the Great's filicide, but the Romanov rule consistently repressed dissent, punished disobedience with death. Some attribute the misfortunes of their descendants to a curse.
Family found themselves captive back at the Alexander Palace. But even here, the world was turned upside down.
Ptolemaic Dynasty. Ptolemy I ascended to rule Egypt after serving under Alexander the Great, then proclaimed himself an earthly embodiment of the gods.
The Ptolemaic Dynasty began under the rule of Ptolemy, whose goal was to make Egypt great again.
The legacy of his lineage was anything but ordained, however, as evidenced by the cruelty placed upon the heads of Egypt's people and members of Ptolemy's own family.
Cleopatra understood the power of chemical warfare, but man, was she brutal at times.
There was a constant struggle for power over the course of the Ptolemaic Dynasty's nearly 300-year reign. These bloody familial confrontations spilled over into how this family line forced citizens into slavery and taxed them relentlessly, all to line the coffers of Egypt's ruling elite.
It's the old story. Roman greatness built upon Egyptian riches. You shall have them all, and in peace. But there is only one way. My way.
Qin Dynasty. China's first imperial dynasty may have only lasted between 15 and 16 years, but it managed to eliminate the importance of individual freedoms in deference to the state.
The text sets down rules that governed every part of every citizen's daily life, and the penalties for transgression.
The Qin Dynasty's ruling philosophy was known as legalism. Construction on the Great Wall may have occurred during this era, but life under the tyrannical Qin Shi Huang saw an anti-intellectualist front that involved book burning and scholars' executions.
Find out who's responsible and have them killed.
Still, the imperial doctrines instilled by Qin Shi Huang didn't die with the emperor. Some of the harshest policies from the 200s BC carried on into the 20th century.
Qin Shi Huangdi left a legacy, the like of which has never been seen before or since.
Ottoman Empire. Not all empires of cruelty belong to the ancient world or pre-20th century history.
By the end of the 14th century, the Ottomans had conquered or subordinated most of the Anatolian beyliks, as well as the Balkans.
The influence of the Ottoman Empire endured for over 600 years, not coming to an end until the aftermath of the First World War. This essentially means that there exists a long and winding roadmap with which to eye this empire's legacy of brutality and cruelty. The Greek Genocide comes to mind, which took place during the Ottoman Empire's twilight years.
Don't let the memory of what happened to these Greeks of Asia Minor be forgotten.
However, both the Assyrian and Armenian peoples also suffered greatly in genocides perpetrated under Ottoman rule. To this day, the Turkish and Azerbaijani governments officially deny these crimes.
The Kurds in Turkey have a historical debt to the Armenians and other minorities because at the time they were manipulated by the state and essentially had a role in the genocide.
Neo-Assyrian Empire. It's virtually impossible to boil down and contextualize the legacy of a dynasty with as much far-reaching influence as the Neo-Assyrian Empire.
Considered by historians to be the first true empire, Assyria's innovations laid the groundwork for every superpower that's followed.
Still, this worldwide empire retains a reputation for cruelty that endures today, despite the significance of its influence on how future Middle Eastern empires would develop their ideologies. There was no quarter given to enemies on the battlefield or in politics during this time.
Assyrians were military innovators and merciless conquerors.
Torture and fear-building served as important tools within the arsenal of the Neo-Assyrian Empire's rise to power during the 10th century BC. Mongol Empire. It may be known primarily for the legacy of the ruler Genghis Khan, but the Mongol Empire was more than just one man.
Genghis Khan believed that Tengiri wanted him to conquer the entire world in his name. With the nomads of the Mongolian plain united, this seemed within reach.
It was a complicated and history-making empire that, at its peak, stretched to 9 million square miles. This meant that any city that stood in the way of the Mongol expansion risked utter decimation should any resistance be offered against the empire.
Very often, thousands upon thousands of his enemies would surrender because of fear rather than having to endure the attacks by the Mongols.
Additionally, there was no course of action that was considered forbidden by the opposition, as the Mongol hordes would execute entire tribes of people without any mercy. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. House of Habsburg. Political houses such as that of Habsburg aren't usually whittled down to a single authoritative figure, yet Elizabeth Bathory wasn't just any countess.
She had cousins and brothers who were princes and bishops, but also who were, in a way, mass murderers, who would torture the peasants, who would kill their opponents in the most brutal and savage manner.
She was the subject of a legend that alleged she bathed in the blood of young women in order to preserve her youth. Historians today, meanwhile, often debate how much truth lies within these claims against Bathory's character.
It allows one to have kind of a horror novel made out of a real life.
This wasn't the only alleged example of Habsburg cruelty, however, as evidenced by their efforts within Spanish colonialism and the 30 Years' War. Threats to their influence or political control were crushed by any means necessary.
Everyone is dying, but only I must not die.
What do you think is the most interesting period in history for chaotic political dynasties? Let us know in the comments.